Howdy, hackers, and welcome to another episode of FairLight TV. On X, they tend to have something which is sort of I would say, like a keynote speaker, and David Pleasance was there this year, so I hope my green screen will not rule it. Sorry about the green sections that you can actually see through. But so David was one of the guys from Commodore, worked in marketing and sales both in the US and the UK, and being responsible for certain bigger parts of the European markets. And he wrote this absolutely amazing book. And I should show you this. So I now have a signed copy, proudly sitting in my shelf here. Oh, well, normally it sits in the shelf. I had the opportunity of talking a bit directly to David, and then I also recorded his official presentation. And you will have both of those segments here. I'm sorry, again, one of those GoPro things. I ran out of battery or ran out of memory space on the memory card. So when the questions started coming in, I sort of lost it. So if it ends a bit abruptly, sorry about that. I hope that what I was able to capture is still a valid piece of stuff for you to actually digest. So over to David Pleasance. Hi David.
Hi.
Is this your first copy party?
It is indeed, yes.
Yeah? So you were involved in marketing manager for Commodore Europe, right? Or UK only?
No, it's a little bit more interesting than that.
Yeah?
I joined Commodore in June of 1983 as a salesman to sell the Commodore PET into the retail market.
Yeah?
The PET at that time was the only business product they really had. Anyway, I'd only been there a few weeks when they made the decision to drop making the PET. So I moved then to the consumer division. Okay, where are we going to? I just moved to the consumer division to look after the V20, more importantly the 64. And the 64 has just been out, 4 or 5 months. And of course, for me, that was the most opportune moment because 64 became huge, as you probably all know. Anyway, I was doing that at Commodore UK. Until when we released the Amiga, I did some very obviously marketing activities. We launched the first ever pack, the Batman pack. And
I remember the box with the massive Batman logo on it.
Exactly.
Computer with a number of with a joystick and a number of games, including Batman. Then I guess.
F-18 and Deluxe Paint. Anyway, the concept was, my concept was, from now on we don't sell computers, we sell dreams. Because trying to sell a computer, basically it's a piece of plastic with some keys on it. Very difficult to market. But by putting these bundles together, anyway, I only committed to 10,000 pieces because it was a new idea. And we ended up, we sold 186,000 of them in 12 weeks. It was incredible. As a result of that, I got made sales and marketing director.
Now we're talking Amiga 500, right?
Yes,
So the Amiga 1000 was already out there.
Yes,
there was a bit of a footprint. Okay.
Yeah, because that was a business product, not a consumer product.
Okay, so
Anyway, I got made sales and marketing director. Only a few months later, I got promoted to general manager at Commodore Electronics Limited, which was the holding company for the whole group, based in Basel in Switzerland. And I was looking after 35 countries, all the countries where Commodore did not have an operating office. So I looked after Finland and Turkey, and anyway, 35 countries. And I was doing that for 2 years. And then in January of 1992, I was made vice president of the American USA, the sales office, Commodore Inc. Because Commodore USA had been doing absolutely terribly badly, all sorts of things. And when I got there, it was in an absolute mess, and I sorted it out. I won't go into details here, but anyway, I sorted it out, and we started trading again, and that was doing quite well. But I then said to Mary Ali, who was my boss, my job here is done now for a while. We were sort of talking about it. I said, I don't want to sell any more products into the market had been stuffed up with products that on a sale or return basis because they couldn't sell, and we had to take them all back. It's a long story. Anyway, he said, why are you saying that? I said, you and I both know we've got the Amiga 1200 coming shortly, but if I keep selling them 500s right to the last minute, and then the 1200s come, they're going to say, will you take the 500s back? I don't want to do that. But if they order themselves, I have sold to them, it's their responsibility. So that was my rationale. So anyway, I came back to the CEL business looking after the other countries, and then I was forced into going back to the UK as managing director because they're in big financial trouble, and they knew that I'd built the business in the UK, even though I wasn't, the managing director. So they forced me back to do that. So my history with Commodore 12 and a half years was right all the way through different countries and everything. So it's an incredible experience, and I love to talk about it because it was part of my DNA. It was really, really good.
And you are here with a few hundred people who shares that, but sort of on the other side, not the selling part, but the buying part. We bought the dream and we lived the dream.
Yes, absolutely, yeah indeed.
So looking back, would there be any sort of decisions that you would do anything else? I mean, going business versus towards the consumers?
Well, let me state this right at the beginning. The first problem is Commodore did not have a business plan. Now, I don't care what kind of business it is. If you haven't got a business plan, you will not succeed. Right? The second thing is...
Or you could do by luck, but it's better to have it by strategy rather than by luck.
The second thing is that they never had any external auditing. Now, what does that mean? That means they relied upon each general manager or managing director, depending on their status, in each subsidiary, reporting their sales and their figures, and them being true.
Okay.
But they didn't check them.
Is this why the number of sold C64s is sort of vague, because nobody really knows? Or?
No, I can tell you that. I'll tell you that in a second. I'll just finish the story about lack of financial control. Bernard Van Tienen was the general manager of Commodore the Netherlands. It's very appropriate, here we are. And he was a crook. He was an absolute crook. Right?
Okay, yeah.
Every quarter we used to have a general managers meeting, and we would discuss the results of our endeavours and the plans for the next quarter. And every quarter he used to brag to us, other fellow general managers, that he had not reached his target. So at the end of the quarter he would invent invoices. He would put product on a truck, send it out of the company at the end of the quarter, and back in again the company the next 3 days. It started quarter after quarter after quarter. Now Commodore looks at it and thinks it's all sales, and it isn't real sales. So Commodore never knew. Are you going to be here later?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
Because it's going to be part of my presentation.
Yeah, okay.
I'll tell you anyway, right? When Commodore went bankrupt, Commodore UK was the strongest business, and we were the very last to close. 14 months after the parent company went. It just happened that we shared some IP with Commodore Holland. I don't know I can't remember what it was, something minor. Anyway, the liquidator at Commodore Holland invited us over and discuss how we were going to deal with it. Right? So we're sitting there, and it was fine. And he said, oh, by the way, what do you think of this? And he pushed a piece of paper across to us, and it was an expenses claim from Bernard Van Tienen, he was still alive then, for services rendered by Yabium. You know Yabium?
No.
It was then the most high-profile brothel in Amsterdam. It was $480,000.
That's very difficult to expense in any company, I would say.
And remember, his expenses were based on his turnover, but the turnover wasn't real. So it's one thing on top of another. So it's no wonder that Commodore had no control over its finances, you know.
But that's still one market, and that wasn't what brought the company down, I guess. So.
Well, yeah, but those principles, not having a business plan and not having financial control, that can only lead to disaster. Then you add to it mismanagement on a grand scale, when every single decision that was made was completely and utterly wrong. You know, it's all in my book. This is what my presentation is about tonight. Sadly, I've sold all the books. I've only got 2 left. But anyway, that's by the by. It's all in the book. It tells the whole story. I joined in 1983, and it tells right to the very end after bankruptcy and Commodore's UK is closing. But it's an unbelievable read. There's chapters in there from many other people from within Commodore. Their own chapters. For example, Dave Haney, the engineer, has written a chapter. R.J. Michael, one of the designers of the Amiga, has written a chapter. Beth Richards, she was the engineer designing the CD1200, which never got released because they went bankrupt. There's people from all over. There's a guy from based in Belgium. He talks about the Netherlands and all the crappy things that went on. It's a really intriguing read. But the thing is, it's all true. Because it is the true, genuine true story.
The inside story. But, I mean, again, going back to how would Commodore, if you would have changed Commodore at one point in time, would you have changed the management principles? I mean, having better control. That's of course one thing. That's hygiene, I would say. But this consumer market versus business market.
Well, they actually are one. Really, they are one. Because
they are now, but were they then?
Of course they were. I'll give you an example. When I was recruited back in 1983, I'd been out of the country because I was living in Australia. So I said to them, give me 3-4 weeks. I want to research the retail market so I know who I'm dealing with. Because things have changed a little bit. And we had Dixons and Comet and Currys and all these people.
They're resellers, right? I know
they're all shops, big shops, right? Anyway, there was a small chain called Lasky's. Lasky's had 54 shops, and in those 54 shops, they had 26 store within a store concept to a micropoint, and they were the start of the retailers selling business product. So that's who I chose to market to. And I was virtually finished, just about ready to start selling them when Commodore said we're not making any more pets. So, which is showing why they didn't have a business plan, right? Anyway, what I'm saying is that back in '93, that was when they were starting to become merged. And that's a good illustration of it. And nowadays, all the retailers, they try and stock a range of everything that within their field. So, but interesting that you asked me about what we've done. Colin Proudfoot was my co-MD in Commodore UK, and I'll tell you why. When I was forced back, Mehdi said, I want you to take over the UK because we're financially in trouble, we need all the support we can get. And I said, well, Mehdi, I said, look, I can read a balance sheet, but I'm not a financial guy. I'm your sales and marketing guy. You want sales, let me do that. Can I share my MD-ship with whoever's running finance? We had a financial controller, Colin Proudfoot, and so let's appoint him as co-MD so that we share the responsibility. I'll get the sales and he can look after the finances, right? It's worked really well. Anyway, Colin and I eventually decided that we would do manage and buy the whole thing.
Okay.
Right? And we used a company called Coopers and Lybrand, who are
management consultants
and accountants. And anyway, with us and our business plan, we raised $50 million. Right? And And we had a whole business plan of what we were going to do and how we were going to rescue the company and all the rest of it, right? Anyway, right at the last minute, we got cheated out of it. Petro who was working for Commodore, he was the guy that his job was to make sure if we forecast to sell 10,000 Amiga 500s, those 10,000 would be in our warehouse. That was his job, was product, I can't think what it's called anyway, but his job was to do that, and he was used to that. Anyway,
sounds like logistics.
Yeah, it was logistics, exactly. Anyway, he did a favour that Manfred Schmidt, before ESCOM became big, Manfred Schmidt was selling 64s when they were in big demand. And as a favour to Manfred Schmidt, Petro made sure they had 64s. So when it came to, after Commodore's bankruptcy, Manfred Schmidt gave Petro a job. And then he said, you're in charge of the Amiga. And so Petro went to Westchester to do due diligence to see what you're buying. And I was there with colleagues. And anyway, the bottom line is that half of our investment was from a Chinese manufacturing company. So we had 25 million coming in from two individual wealthy men and one guy representing, I think, 3 or 4 wealthy guys. And then they were 25 million. The other 25 million was coming in from New Star Electronics, which was a Chinese manufacturing company that was ripping off Sega and Nintendo in China for years. And they've been told by the Chinese government, you've got to get legitimate. So they were going to come in and be half, 50% shareholders of our own manufacturing in China, which was the most perfect, for us it was the most perfect thing. 2 days before the auction, Petro went to them, New Star Electronics, and said, don't pay 25 million, you can come in with us for a lot less money, which they didn't do anyway. So they stole our investment from us right at the last minute. Now, the reason I'm telling you all this is because I'm just writing a new book.
Okay.
And the new book is called Dare to Dream, and it's about what Colin and I would have done with Commodore, our business plan, how we were going to finance it and all the rest of it. And I'm writing that with Dave Haney. You know Dave Haney?
I met him in Gothenburg a few years ago. So
Well,
very competent guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he knew that if we won the bid, he was going to be my chief engineer. Because he and I got on really well anyway. He's the most forward-thinking guy there was. Anyway, so he's working with me on it. And we've now got the benefit of hindsight. We can look back and we can say, as this technology was developed, new technology that comes into the market, how we would have incorporated that into our machines. The difference between what we were going to do and our predecessors is that we wanted to collaborate with everybody. If somebody's making something that enhances our product, let's work with them. And engineers working together and then share the spoils. You keep your costs down and share the spoils. That was what we were going to do. So the book we're writing about is kind of, in some ways it's fictional, but in other ways it's based on reality.
The future you aim to build, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the book's called Dare to Dream, and it's a vision of what Commodore and Amiga could have been and should have been. That's the basis of it.
We are looking forward to that.
Yeah, everybody says that.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Okay, I'm very proud to announce our special guest. It is David John Pleasance, who will take you back in time to tell us more about Commodore Inc. Please, David Pleasance.
Thank you so much, everybody, and I just want to say what a fantastic welcome I've had from all of you. It's been a real joy to be here, and in some ways I feel a little bit out of my depth because you guys are into this product that we sold in such a way that nobody could ever have dreamed of all those years ago. And from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for what you do. This is fantastic, and thank you. I have to start, I'm afraid, with a bit of an apology because I feel a bit embarrassed. This presentation is about the very first book that I wrote about Commodore, which is this one here. which is called Commodore, the Inside Story, and I'm going to give you the whole story in the presentation about what's inside the book, but I've sold them all already. So, I mean, obviously, you can buy it online and so on and so forth, and we'll make a special arrangement for you to be able to get the book, probably through Bart in the museum in Helmond, because it's one of the easiest ways, but we'll talk about that later. So I'm just embarrassed that I was hoping to be able to sell a whole shed load of these, but they've already gone. So I'm not sorry, but anyway, I just want to let you know. Okay, Commodore, the Inside Story. This is the true story of how Commodore, a once $1 billion.
We'll do the presentation.
Oh, sorry.
F5. F5.
Ah, thank you. This works also.
No, that's the next slide. Okay. Anyway, this is the true story of how Commodore, once was $1 billion corporation, went into bankruptcy, which, you know, actually given today's circumstances, probably not such a surprise, but I think to all of us it was. Right, this is me when I wore a younger man's clothes. And what I want to do is to give you an overview of my career at Commodore, which I hope will justify my right to produce this book, because I think you'll realise when you understand what level of involvement I had with Commodore over 12 and a half years, that it justifies me being able to write this book. So I was actually recruited in June of 1983 to sell the Commodore PET into the retail market. Now, they did not know, Commodore did not know, should they get a computer specialist who knew nothing about retail, or a retail specialist who knew nothing about computers. And I fit the bill quite well, being somebody who was a retail specialist. The interesting thing is that after only a few weeks, Commodore decided that they were not going to make any more pets. So I'd been recruited really under false pretensions, really. Anyway, luckily for me, at that same time, the 64 had been released probably about 4 or 5 months before, and this consumer division had its own sales manager, a guy called Paul Welsh, and he had a guy that was looking after the key accounts in retail, and he decided to leave. God knows why at that time. Anyway, he did, my good fortune, so I moved over to the consumer division and started selling VIC-20s and Commodore 64s. I'm going to skip through some of these things anyway. One of the things I did was to introduce new marketing initiatives, and I'm skipping right up to the launch of the Amiga 500 and beyond. And what happened there was that I came up with the concept that it's very, very hard to sell a piece of plastic with some keys on it, because it doesn't do anything. How can you market it? So I made the decision that from now on we don't sell computers, we sell dreams. And the bottom line is that we produced a fantastic pack, which is called the Batman pack. And just to let you know about the circumstances, because this was a fundamental change in the way that Commodore European-wide marketed. I went to Ocean Software, who had just come back from Hollywood. They just paid $1 million for the rights to use the name Batman, the movie, on their new game. And I went to them with a ridiculous proposition. I said, gentlemen, I'm going to give you a proposition that you'll either have the guts to go with, or you'll send the men in the white coats to drag me away. What do you want to do, David? I said, okay. I said, when's the game going to be released? And they said, September. I said, perfect timing. I said, what I want to do, I said, I want to produce a pack which is actually the Batman pack. It features Batman. The fact that there is an Amiga inside is incidental. I want you to give it to me exclusively for 2 months, so September, October, or October, November, whenever the product comes out. 2 months I want it exclusively in the pack. You can't buy it on its own over the counter. I said, I want to pay you very little for it, and I only want to commit to 10,000 pieces. And when 10,000 was a big gamble in those days, let me tell you. Anyway, they thought about it, and the first thing they said was send the men in the white coats, because it's a crazy concept. Anyway, they said, look David, they said, we've got a few concerns. I said, first of all, we think our dealers will be upset. If it's only available in the pack and they can't sell it, they're going to be upset. And I said, well, actually, I think after a couple of days, they'll be pretty happy, because if this works, they'll be selling a £400 product vis-a-vis a £40 product. And as a retailer, I know what I prefer to sell. Okay. They said, David, we've just done our numbers. We estimate we've just paid $1 million, and we estimate it's going to cost us another $1 million to make the game. And based on those figures, we worked out how many minimum we need to sell to break even, and how many we'd like to sell. And we're afraid that this activity will affect those numbers. And I said, well, gentlemen, it will, but I said, remember, I've got a much bigger marketing budget than you, and my marketing budget is going on Batman. Okay. And anyway, cut a long story short, they had the guts to go with it, and I'll never forget that. I think that was an amazing thing to do. The bottom line is exactly as I predicted. The dealers were upset for a couple of days, and after that it was all forgiven. They didn't do the numbers they predicted. They did 5 times their highest estimate of sales. 5 times. And I didn't take 10,000 pieces from them. I took 186,000 pieces, because that's how many Batman packs we sold in 12 weeks at Christmas. 186,000 pieces. Which proves the concept that that my idea was right. We don't sell computers, we sell dreams. 160,000 Batman. Anyway, as a result of that, I was promoted to sales and marketing director in Commodore UK. And to be honest with you, I think rightly so. But what happened was that very shortly after, 2 or 3 months after, there was a vacancy for a general manager's position in Commodore Electronics Limited, CEL, based in Basel in Switzerland, which was the holding company for the whole group of Commodore. And I applied for that and got that job. And that meant I was looking after 35 countries. And these are countries where Commodore did not have an operating subsidiary. And so that included Finland and Turkey, and I actually opened up India and so on. It was a dream job for me, because I loved to travel, and to get paid for it and do something you love was brilliant. Then in January of 1992, at a meeting in Frankfurt, a general manager's meeting, with Mehdi Ali, who was the president of the company, he told me that I had to take over as vice president of consumer products in the States, because the States we called them sales prevention officers, because they were terrible. They had no idea about the selling and so on. And he made me on the same day, I think it was the 5th of January, 1992, and I was in Frankfurt. He said, I want you on the 7 o'clock flight out of London, no excuses. Now, what he'd forgotten, because it probably didn't matter to him, the 7 o'clock flight out of London was Concorde. So I did get to fly on Concorde once, which was rather nice. Anyway, I went to the US, and I sorted out the mess there. What had happened, I won't go into great detail now, it's all in the book. But Commodore's customers were not paying their bills, and nobody could understand why. I found out why. They'd been filled to the gunnels with a product that was very difficult to sell, and it had been sold to them, signed by the president of Commodore Inc., Jim Dion, sale or return. And of course, nobody knew this had been done, and so nobody would take the product back because they didn't know they had to. And that's why nobody was paying their bills. It was stalemate, if you like. Anyway, I sorted that out. And then eventually I told Mehdi Ali that I don't want to stay in America any longer until we launch the 1200. Because if I stay and keep selling into them, when we launch the 1200 in a few months' time, they're going to say, take all our 500s back, which obviously I didn't want to do. But if I left there and they reordered, it's on them, not on me. Do you understand what I was saying? So I took myself out of the job there, all fully expecting to go back. But anyway, shortly after that, I was forced back to the UK as MD. I wasn't given an option because Commodore was in big financial trouble, and they knew that the UK was the strongest one, and they knew that I'd kind of built the business. Okay, I think that as an overview of the career with Commodore, I was in 12 and a half years. I think you'll understand that I think it gives me the right to have written this book, and now I'll just tell you more about the book. If that wasn't enough to entice you, the book contains several unedited chapters from many people who also worked within Commodore. What happened was that when I'd written my story, I read it back to myself and I thought, this is more a story about David Pleasance than it is about Commodore. And then I thought, well, actually it can't be anything else because this is through my ears and my eyes, so I'm telling it as it was. But for me, it wasn't enough. I wanted to give a much broader perspective of what was happening at Commodore, but also from the inside. So I enticed several people from within Commodore to write chapters, and which I promised I would not edit anything. Whatever they wrote, it didn't matter what it was, it would be printed, because it's their story. For example, R.J. Michael, one of the designers of the Amiga, he's written a chapter. Dave Haney, I think most of you know of Dave. Without doubt, he was the most forward-thinking engineer in Commodore at the time. Tim Chaney, he was the guy who I replaced from the consumer division. He decided to leave just after the 64 was launched. He's made a very good career in software anyway, but I'm just putting him up there because I want him to write about a few months before I joined. Gail Wellington, some of you might know her. She was head of CATS, Commodore Amiga Technical Support. Lovely lady. She's very unwell at the moment. I wish her well. I'm sure she'll get better soon. Dr. Peter Kittel, he was in Commodore Germany, and he was responsible for all of the documentation on virtually every product. Nice, very nice guy actually. Beth Richards, she's an engineer in Westchester. She was working when Commodore went bankrupt on the CD1200 to turn the Amiga 1200 into a 32. Obviously it didn't get finished, but there's another side to that. Miguel de Gracia, now that's interesting. I wanted to put him in there because he was the son of Santiago de Gracia, who was the general manager of Commodore Spain, who I got on particularly well with. We loved to drink Rioja together. Anyway, he asked, Santiago asked me if his son could come and work with us. And he was an intern at Commodore UK, and very much under my wing, if you like. And he's recently been elected to the board of a big company. He's doing really, really well. So I wanted him to put his perspective in. Joe Benzing, I don't have a picture of him because he moved to Ukraine, and I haven't heard from him for a little while. Now, Wim Wilders, he was Commodore Benelux. And his chapter tells all the stories about all the goings on, mostly in Commodore Netherlands. And it was, well, it was illegal, and well, I'll tell you a story. I wasn't there, but I'll tell you the story. Commodore UK was the very last of Commodore companies to go bankrupt. We lasted 14 months, I think it was. Anyway, Commodore UK shared, I think it was an IP with Commodore Netherlands, some small thing. So the liquidator of Commodore Netherlands asked us to go over and just discuss this IP, which we did, it was no problem. Anyway, while we were there, he said, what do you think of this? And he pushed a piece of paper across to us. And it was an expense claim from a certain Mr. Bernard Van Tienen, who was the general manager of Netherlands. He's passed away now. He later, his company's called Checkmate, and it made new cases for the Amiga, and recently just launched a whole range of monitors, fabulous things. So he's written a chapter. Now, a quick rundown of the contents. 340 pages. A forward by Trevor Dickinson from Aeon Technologies. Now, part 1 is my contribution, and that has chapters 1 to 9. Chapter 1 chronicles my early career before Commodore. It's just to give you an overview, really. Then we talk about Commodore UK, Slough, where we started, then to Corby. We had a big plant in Corby, and back to Maidenhead. Then CEL in Basel, where I was for 2 years. And then there's an interlude, which is about Commodore the Netherlands, because it's a bit sufficient enough chapter for it to be written about. And then Commodore Inc. in the US, as I just explained to you. This also part of the thing is, I call it a comedy of errors, because our illustrious president, Mr. Mehdi Ali, who, when I'm asked how to describe him, I describe him as a Pakistani Danny DeVito, because that's his size. His cigar was bigger than him, you know. But you cannot meet a bigger imbecile in your life. I'm not kidding. And also Irving Gould, who was a chairman, who I actually got to know quite well. And if you don't mind, I'll tell you a little story. It is in the book, but I'll tell you this little story. I was quite close to Irving, although he would never listen to anything about Mehdi's misgivings. Every time I mentioned it, he said, I put him there, let him do what he wants to do. But anyway, one day I had the impertinence to ask him how he made his fortune, because he was a very, very wealthy man. And he'd been brought in by Jack Tramiel, and Jack Tramiel ended up with 7% of the company, and he had 22%. So I just said to him one day, I said, Irving, would you mind telling me, if it's not too rude, how you made your fortune? And I'll tell you exactly word for word what he said. He said, David, I took the best piss of my life. What are you talking about? He said, it was like this, he said, I was in the Four Seasons restaurant in Manhattan, which at the time was the place to be. He said, I need to take a leak. He said, so I walked into the toilet. I just started, a young guy came in. I hope you don't mind me swearing, but I'm just telling you word for word. He said, a young guy came in, the young guy said, fucking can't believe this, they're so fucking stupid, they've got the best fucking opportunity in the world. Anyway, Irving said, whoa, he said, you're upset, what's wrong? This guy said, oh look, he said, I've just brought a proposition to my company, incredible proposition, and it just turned it down, and I can't believe how bloody stupid they are. So Irving said, well, tell me, what is the proposition? And this guy said, well, you know how goods get transported around the world by sea? He said, and it's very difficult. He said, if you're moving oil, you're moving grain, you're moving electronics or whatever, it's very difficult to stow them into the hold. So these guys have come up with a concept of containerized things. They've got 20-foot, 40-foot containers. They've got special vehicles to move them around. They've got ships which will carry them. It's a revolution. He said, an artist brought to my company the rights for that whole situation for the USA, and they've turned it down. And Irving said, you've just found your man. And that's how he made his fortune. I just thought it's an interesting thing. Okay, I'll get to the worldwide launch of the CD32. I have to tell you that I was vehemently against the launch being brought forward. In all my years at Commodore, the CD32 was the only product that ever actually planned to make and launch properly. And then Mehdi Ali wanted to screw up the deal. I had got development kits into all the major software houses in the UK. They're all working on brand new software that utilises the extra benefits that the CD32 brought. And it was planned that the launch would be the following late spring, early summer. So they had time to make the games, and we had time to get... And also, we had Amiga 1200s not long previously been launched, and we got orders coming out of the yin-yang for them for the Christmas period. And Mehdi insisted to bring the launch forward. He said, I need the extra sales. I said, Mehdi, you are crazy. We're not going to get extra sales. All you'll do is kill the 1200. And you know, so what are we going to do with all that stock? And I said, the games aren't ready. People are going to very quickly port existing games from the 1200, and people who buy the CD32 are going to be disappointed. He would not listen under any circumstances. So I was forced to do the worldwide launch. Now, sometimes there is a God, because we set the launch date for the 16th of September, 16th for a special reason. Just prior to the launch, there was an article in PC Week magazine where the reporter had interviewed Tom Kalinske. Tom Kalinske was the worldwide president of Sega. And they said to Tom Kalinske, what about CD-based 32-bit games? And he said, can't be done. If anybody can do it, it would be Sega, it can't be done. And it was reported. It was written down and reported. I mean, thank you, God. Because I knew within a couple of weeks we were launching ours, right? So obviously we used that as part of our launch. Then, maybe a couple of days later, I got a phone call from a guy who said, you won't remember me, David. He said, but you guys took some poster sites from us over the last couple of years. We've got poster sites all over the UK. He said, and you know how we work. He said, when you book a particular site, you pay 50% up front, and then when it goes live, you pay the 50%. He said, I've got 3 prime poster sites in central London, which the guys have already paid 50% on, and now he's not going to go ahead with it, so I'll offer them to you the other 50%. Oh, and by the way, one of them is right outside Sega's head office. Absolutely true, I swear to my life. So the reason why we picked the 16th of September, because 16 will never be the same again. And that was the invitation, the printed invitation that sent out to everybody. Again, I like to do things in a theatrical way, but they're also meaningful, and I think you'll agree that that kind of works. We did the CD launch, 32 launch at the Science Museum, and though you won't know this guy's called Chris Evans. He was a radio DJ who ended up buying the radio station, doing lots on television. He was quite a big star. He now owns one of the biggest collections of Ferraris in the world. Very, very, but we got him just at the right time, just before he made all his big money. Right. Now, getting back to Sega and the fact that they could not, they admitted they couldn't do it. I don't know if you've ever seen Sega's advertising, so let me just show you this. Oh, I've got to make it live. How do I do that? I can't remember. Come on, David. How do I make this live? Somebody help me? It's got to access. Do you know how to make that live? Yeah, it should be on there. And it was, I tested it before, it worked, so I don't know why. Anyway, look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Their advertising used to be this good takes ages. To be this good, and they spin the word ages around, takes Sega. Very clever. That particular advert was awful, but anyway. So this is how we responded. You've got to admit it's a classic, and we were jumping around. It was so good. I mean, I didn't come up with that concept, but I had the balls to do it. Now, the interesting thing is that in those days, it was pretty much a cottage industry, and we all knew each other. I mean, I knew Nick Alexander, who was my equivalent, he was the MD of Sega UK, and we'd be competitors in the daytime and we'd have a beer at night you know, at the bar because we were that close. Anyway, just a couple of weeks after that went up, we used to have an annual industry dinner in the Gloucester Hotel in London, and we'd raise money for charity, you know, the usual thing, glitz and awards and everything. So I was there with about 4 tables of people, and he was there with his people. And he walked over to me and he said, a bit close to home, Mr. Pleasance, a bit close to home. And I just said, well, Nick, where needs must, where needs must. And never another word was said. That they were seething, they were so angry. But they couldn't do anything about it because their boss had said, we can't do it, you know. So sometimes there is a God, yeah? Now, next part of the book, I'm just going to briefly go over these. There's a scandal of the SCI, was a company in Scotland who were manufacturing 1200s for us at a time when we owed them money, and there was a big scandal about it. It's all in there. Then there's an interlude. I call these things interlude because they're not actually part of the story, but they fit in pretty well. Colin Proudfoot was my co-MD in UK, and we took a PC magazine to court because we took them to court personally because they wrote an article which was under a pseudonym, and don't you hate that when these guys haven't got the guts to use their own bloody name? And he wrote, and I think I can quote this, he wrote, "There's a nasty smell coming from Heathrow Airport where the directors of Commodore were seen with suitcases full of used £50 notes." And so we took them to court for libel. And their defence was, but we didn't mention anybody's name, and we just showed the court all the magazines, with particularly my name was in all of them. Everybody knew who we were, so we won the lawsuit. And we got some money from them. And then the next is the management bio, which Colin and I attempted to do, and we got cheated out of, and it's a very good story. And then Chelsea Football Club. It's interesting because at the very same time, or more or less, that Commodore UK sponsored Chelsea, and at that moment in time, it was the biggest sponsorship deal. At that time, it was the biggest sponsorship deal in football history. It's been superseded a zillion times since then, but at that moment in time, we paid a lot of money. But interestingly, Commodore Germany sponsored Bayern Munich around the same time, and Commodore France, Paris Saint-Germain. So it's interesting that even though we did not talk to each other, we weren't even kind of allowed to, we obviously followed the same trend, which I think really shows how Europe was so much more advanced than the US, for example. All right, and then the next thing is after Commodore. Now this is part 2, which is the chapters from the other people. One more untold Amiga story from R.J. Michael, and you'll see I put the Commodore C next to the people who actually were Commodore employees, and it's most of them. And then Dave Haney, then in the early days, Tim Cheney, the guy that I said I took over from. Memories of the Soft Side from Gail Wellington. My time at Commodore Germany, Dr. Peter Kittle. Design Many and Ship Fu, which is so true of Commodore, Beth Richards. Memories of a Young Recruit, is that Miguel de Gracia. And then Joe Benzing, who I said he's in the Ukraine and I haven't heard from him, so I hope he's okay, but who knows. And then people who wasn't in Commodore, like Francois Lyonnais, and he's how the Amiga changed his life. Death by Management is the Wim Mulders one, which is about how all the dodgy goings on in Commodore Netherlands. Then there's Kieran Sumner's account of the Amiga 1500, and then there's Steve Jones, who he brought the Amiga 1500 to Kieran's attention, and there was a battle between them anyway. And then in the final part is quotes from various people and acknowledgements of photo credits and so on. So that's what's in the book. Now, this book is already available in German. We had it published, I think it was it came out in August last year. We actually had it, I was selling it at Gamescom. It's just been translated into Polish and is ready to be printed. We'll run a Kickstarter for that. And it's currently being translated into Latin Spanish by, there's a museum in Argentina working with the local university, and actually they're going to be translating all 4 of my books. So that's really quite interesting. The book has been reprinted 5 times, I think. First time it was printed in Malta, then it was printed in Turkey, and the last time it was printed in India. We're following wherever the cheapest cost is. Okay, I'm just going to mention very briefly, well, I've got some over there, the trilogy of books that were written after Commodore the Inside Story. And just to tell you about this, I wanted to write a book about what happened to Commodore's trademarks, their logos, their IPs and their patents after their bankruptcy. And because what happened was all of these vultures come in trying to get a piece of the action and making a quick buck or whatever it was. Some of them with good intentions and some of them with not good intentions. And in the meantime, of course, the technology has moved on and on and on and on. So I said to myself, what's the latest technology? Which, when I started the book, was the vampire board. And so I thought, this is the most perfect title, From Vultures to Vampires, which is a great title, you must agree. However, what we didn't realise is there was going to be 3 books, because we did so much research, there was so much information that we just did not want to leave out. You can't tell half the story. So the concept for 1 book into 3, and all 3 volumes are there. Volume 1 covers from 1995 to 2005, Volume 2 from 2005 to 2010, and Volume 3 covers 2010 to 2023. And it's a great read. If you're into that thing, which I think you guys certainly are, it's a good read. There's the books. I said I've got some. I've only got a handful here. So what you've got there, you've got 4 books which cover 4 years of research that cover 40 years of Commodore history. And I think that's worth a round of applause. And I'm being cheeky, I've got to promote how I'm kind of making a bit of a living now. I've got Commodore branded clothing and stuff on the table over there. And it's a difficult thing to do because you've got everybody's choices of colours, you've got everybody's size differences. It's really difficult to be on the money. But I pride myself in everything I produce is good quality, and I make sure that the quality is good. Now, I've also launched my own branding because I got fed up of being told that you can't do this, you can't do that with the trademarks. So I've come up with this concept, proud to be an Amiga-holic, which I think works pretty well. And this is an example of what I produced. Now, unfortunately, not in time for this show, but we're also doing proud to be a Commodorian. So, that'll be something that I think you Commodore people will appreciate, more so than the Amiga people, obviously. So I've got a range of goods for the Amiga-holics. These are tracksuits, caps of different colours. A bit premature. I've got mugs and key rings and all sorts of fancy things, really memorabilia that I'm looking forward for people to buy and enjoy. And then, I guess finally, I just want to announce that I'm about to launch a new Kickstarter for a new book. And the book is called Dare to Dream. And this is not the finished cover, by the way. We start off with basic designs and then end up after lots of work to get a good cover. But basically the concept is, what would have happened if Colin Proudfoot and I had actually won the management buyout, what we were planning to do, how we intended to fund the R&D that was so sadly lacking in the previous Commodore Amiga, in order to produce more Amigas and better and beyond. And with that book, I'm very proud to announce that I'm actually working with Dave Haney. I can put that on there. So Dave Haney and I are actually writing the book. We did a video on Wednesday this week announcing the Kickstarter, and so we're really lucky because we've now got the benefit of hindsight with all the technology that's come out since Commodore's bankruptcy, how we would have dealt with that technology, how we would have collaborated with all of those manufacturers of various things, and said to them, look, your engineers work closely with ours. We'll avoid all of the incompatibility problems by working together, and it'll save money, and we'll share the spoils. And we would have done that. So Dave is writing about the technology and how he would have introduced it. He's all talking about AAA and the AGA chipset and so on and so forth. So it's going to be a really intriguing book because basically we're kind of starting from today and working backwards. And so in a way it's a little bit of fiction, but it's also real too. And I think you'll find, well, I know you'll love the book because what we planned for Commodore would have worked. So the subtitle is the vision of what Commodore and Amiga could have been, ... should have been, ... and that's the new book. So please look out for the Kickstarter, please support it, because without Kickstarter support these things can't be done. It costs a lot to write and to edit and all of those things, even before you get to actually printing the book and so on and so forth. So anyway, if you're intrigued, please look out for it. I'll be promoting it obviously pretty heavily through Facebook and social media, but I'd love you to support it if you can. Anybody who's interested in any of my products, that's it, info@cbmamiga.com. You can reach me there at any time. I stopped using email at davidpleasance.com because when I set that up a long time ago, long before I was back in the community, that was really for personal, family and stuff like that. So I'm trying to move people away from that now, and cbmamiga.com is the way to get hold of me. And I do respond. I think you can tell that. So, questions and comments?
Thank you very much, David. Your testimony story.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
FairLight.